All right, let's dive into a concept that pretty much shapes our global economy, but, it kind of flies under the radar for most people. It's called the arm's length principle, and it's all about how giant companies price sales to themselves. Sounds weird, I know, but it is absolutely key to understanding international tax. So here's the central puzzle we're trying to solve. Imagine a big car company. It designs a cool new engine in Germany, it makes all the little parts in Mexico, and then it puts the whole car together in the US. Now, these are all just different branches of the same corporate family. So how on earth do the tax authorities in Germany, Mexico, and the US decide who gets to tax which slice of the final profit? Yeah, that is the billion-dollar question.
To really get this, let's make it super simple. Think about selling your old laptop. If you put it up for sale online, you're going to try to get the fair market price, right? But if your cousin needs a computer for college, you might just sell it to them for way less. A family discount. The price isn't really about the open market, it's about your relationship. And that right there is exactly what countries worry about with these huge multinational corporations. What if that German design company sells its super valuable patents to its own factory in Mexico for like a family discount of $1? All of a sudden, all the profit gets artificially moved to Mexico, which maybe has lower taxes, and Germany completely loses out on that tax revenue. This is the exact problem that needed a global solution. So how did the world solve this massive puzzle? Well, the international community, with the OECD leading the charge, came up with one single guiding rule to stop this kind of profit shifting, and they called it the arm's length principle. So what is it, really? The definition is actually pretty straightforward. It just means that for tax purposes, that German design company has to charge its Mexican sister company the exact same price for those patents as it would charge a complete stranger. It's simple. No family discounts allowed. The whole goal is to make it look just like a deal on the open market. And listen, this isn't just some friendly suggestion, it's the law. It's baked into literally thousands of tax treaties all around the world. This text you see here from Article 9 of the OECD's Model Treaty is the legal backbone. It gives tax authorities the power to go in and adjust a company's profits if their internal deals don't look like a real-world transaction. Okay, so why did this specific idea become the global standard? Well, for one, it levels the playing field. It makes sure a massive multinational company can't use its internal structure to get an unfair tax break over a smaller, local competitor. And by getting rid of those kinds of distortions, the principle actually helps promote global trade and investment, making the whole system more stable and predictable for everyone.
All right, so the theory is solid, we get it. But how do you actually apply this thing in the real, messy world? How do tax authorities really check if a price is truly at arm's length? It all boils down to one simple word: comparison. The entire application of this principle really hangs on something called a comparability analysis. And all that means is finding a similar deal that happened between two totally unrelated companies, and then using that as a benchmark to test the price that the related companies used. But how do you make sure the comparison is actually fair? Well, analysts look at the transaction from every possible angle using these 5 key factors. They'll check the contract, they'll look at the product itself, the market conditions, the business plan. But the most critical piece of this whole puzzle, the real heart of it, is what the companies actually do. And that brings us to the functional analysis. Okay, this is where the real detective work begins. Investigators have to look past all the legal contracts and the fancy paperwork to see what each company truly does. What people does it have, what assets is it using, and, most importantly, what real economic risks is it actually taking on? This is where you separate what's real from what's just on paper. And risk is absolutely central to this whole analysis, and it follows a pretty simple logic. See, you can't just write in a contract that a company has a risk. You have to ask 2 really important questions. Who is actively controlling the decisions around that risk? And second, who actually has the financial muscle to absorb a loss if things go south? The company that can legitimately say yes to both control and financial capacity, well, that's the one that earns the profit and pays the tax. So the arm's length principle is the global consensus, no doubt about it. But it wasn't the only idea on the table. To get the full picture here, it's really helpful to understand the major alternative that was proposed and, well, ultimately rejected. The main alternative was something called global formulary apportionment. And it's a completely different philosophy. Instead of treating each company's subsidiary as its own separate thing, it would look at the entire global company as just one big pot of profit. Then it would use a fixed formula based on stuff like local sales, number of employees, or assets to slice up that profit pie and give a piece to each country. So why did this idea lose out? Well, the practical problems were just enormous. I mean, can you imagine trying to get nearly 200 countries to agree on one single universal formula? It's pretty much impossible. Every country would be fighting for a formula that benefits them the most. It would create a huge risk of companies getting taxed twice on the same income, and it could lead to really weird results, like giving huge profits to a country that's just a sales office, while the R&D hub that created all the value gets almost nothing. In the end, it was just deemed politically and administratively unworkable. So after all of that, the theory, the reality checks, the ideas that were thrown out, what is the one core principle that you really truly need to remember? It all comes down to this single powerful idea right from the OECD guidelines. When a contract says one thing, but a company's actual actions say another, it's the actions that matter. The real functions they perform and the real risks they take on are what determine the reality for tax purposes. To put it simply, substance always, always wins over form. And this brings us right to the bottom line. You might hear people say profit follows risk, but it's actually more specific than that. The right to the profit belongs to the company that controls the key decisions about a risk and has the financial capacity to actually bear the consequences. It's not about where a piece of paper says the risk is. It's about who is actually in the driver's seat. And so we'll end with this thought. The arm's length principle forces everyone, both the companies and the tax authorities, to look past the paper trail and find the true economic story. It's a really complex global effort to make sure profits are taxed where the value is genuinely being created. Because in the end, what really matters isn't what your contracts say you do, but what you can actually prove you've done.